everyone's talking about it. With a global community stretching from China to Timbuktu to California and everywhere in between, this religion is the way of life of a quarter of humanity. But what is Islam? What do Muslims believe? And what is Shakira's law? Well, let's find out. With about 1.8 billion followers, or 24% of Earth's population, Islam is the second largest religion on the planet, and therefore the universe. Muslims make up the majority of the population in 49 countries, as diverse as Yemen, Nigeria, Albania, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia. This 1,400-year-old religion started in modern-day Saudi Arabia, but today only 20% of Muslims are Arabs. Indonesia is actually the country with the most Muslims, holding around 13% of the world's total. About 30% of Muslims live in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Christianity is named after Christ, Judaism after the tribe of Judea, and Zoroastrianism after the 1998 swashbuckling adventure film The Mask of Zorro, starring Antonio Banderas. But Islam is named after an action. Islam means submission to God, and Muslim is the person that submits to God. The root meaning of the word Islam means peace, safety, and security. The Arabic word for peace, salam, comes from this root along with the Hebrew word shalom. So, submission to God means finding peace by following God. Around the world, regardless of language, most Muslims greet each other in Arabic saying Assalmu Alaikum, peace be upon you. Muhammad was born in 570 CE in Mecca in Arabia. His parents died when he was very young, and Muhammad grew up as an orphan. Back then, the Arabs worshipped hundreds of different gods, and Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, were the guardians of this building, the Kaaba in Mecca. They packed the Kaaba with hundreds of idols to different gods, and the Quraysh got filthy rich taxing pilgrims visiting the Kaaba. Muhammad was deeply religious and wanted to improve his community. All around him he saw poverty, injustice, war, and widespread discrimination against women and orphans. Muhammad saw the rich abuse the poor, and religious festivals had just become giant, decadent parties dedicated to the worship of idols. This is the best religion ever! Woo! Woohoo, religion party! Instead of attending religious festivals every year, Muhammad would just go and pray alone in a cave. Then, in 610 CE, in the month of Ramadan, during one of these lonely cave prayers, Muhammad, now 40 years old, was visited by Gabriel, or Jibril in Arabic. Jibril told Muhammad that there was one God, and that he was now God's messenger. Muhammad received revelations directly from God and then recited them aloud. His companions wrote these revelations down, and they became the Quran, Islam's holy book. Muhammad's words were radical in tribal Arabia. He was saying stuff like, Arab has no superiority over non-Arab, white has no superiority over black. He also demanded an end to the practice of killing infant girls because boys were preferred, saying that girls were equal blessings from God. This didn't exactly go down well in tribal, sexist, and hierarchical Mecca. This whole one God business annoyed the Quraysh because they made money charging people to visit Kaaba to worship hundreds of gods. The poor, slaves, and others flocked to Muhammad. The Quraysh, now furious and losing money, abused the Muslims, especially the vulnerable ones like slaves, who were frequently tortured if they converted. But the Muslims didn't fight back. Muhammad and his God outlawed violence. The Quran said, whoever kills a person, it shall be as if he killed all mankind. After a decade of this persecution, the Muslims fled to the city of Medina. This move in 622 CE marks year 1 on the Islamic calendar. Right now, January 2021 CE is 1442 on the Muslim calendar. Even in Medina, the Quraysh kept attacking the Muslims. So God told Muhammad Muslims could fight back. But God laid down some ground rules for the fighting. Do not target public places, do not destroy farms or herds, do not harm women, children, the elderly or disabled, do not harm animals, trees or plants, and be kind to prisoners, and do not forcefully convert anyone. These strict rules of war were laid down to stop civilians getting hurt. Muhammad said, if someone shows no compassion, God will show no compassion to them. By 630, Muhammad marched on Mecca with an army of 10,000. The city submitted without a battle. Muhammad went straight to the Kaaba and destroyed the hundreds of idols and dedicated it only to God. Just 2 years later, most of Arabia had converted to Islam and was united under Muhammad. Then, on June 8, 632 CE, Muhammad died. Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law, was elected as the first caliph or successor. This election is the cause of the divide between Islam's two major branches, Sunni and Shia. To oversimplify a bit, Sunni believe Abu Bakr was rightly elected. Shia believe Muhammad chose his son-in-law Ali as his successor. Today, Sunni make up between 80 to 90% of all Muslims, while Shia make up about 13%. Over the next 1,400 years, Islam has spread through empires and trade across the Middle East, Africa, Central and South Asia, and China. It spread to Europe, especially the Balkans and Spain, and merchants brought it to Southeast Asia, and slaves brought it with them to the Americas. And that's a very brief version of Muhammad's story. But what exactly was this new religion that he was preaching? Islam might seem complicated at first, but we can break it down into some very easy to understand core beliefs. 1. Belief in one God. Muslims, Christians, and Jews worship the same God. Muslims just call that God Allah, because that's the Arabic word for God. Arab Christians also refer to God as Allah. Muslims believe God is the uncreated, all-knowing, all-powerful, merciful, loving, and genderless creator of the universe. Islam accepts that there is only one God and that believing in other gods or worshipping anything else, be it idols, money, or power, like its God, is a great sin. Islam in general also has no priests, as Muslims are supposed to have a direct, personal connection with God. God created the world in 6 days. After creating the world and everything in it, God created Adam and Eve together from the same clay. The Quran states that God created humanity from a single soul. 2. Belief in the divine books and prophets. Muhammad said he wasn't preaching anything new. He said Islam was the original religion of humanity. He was just a prophet tasked with reminding people of the one God and bringing them back to the correct path. Muhammad is also not the only prophet in Islam. The prophets of Judaism and Christianity are accepted by Muslims too. Dozens of prophets are named in the Quran alongside Muhammad, like Abraham, Moses, Noah, and Jesus. Moses, Jesus, and Jesus' mother, Mary, get a lot of mention in the Quran. In Islam, Muhammad and all the prophets are just humans, but they carry a message, and all prophets brought the same message: a call for peace, a return to worshipping only God, and a warning of the Day of Judgment. Muslims also recognize the Jewish Torah and the Christian Gospel as divine books sent down by God. So Muslims refer to themselves, along with Jews, Christians, and some other peoples, as people of the book. The big difference between them, though, is that Muslims believe that Muhammad is the final prophet and that the Quran is the last divine book. 3. Belief in the Day of Judgment. God created the universe with an expiration date. At one point in the future, the Day of Judgment will come. The world will end, and everyone that has ever lived will be physically resurrected, and their actions in life will be judged and they will be held accountable for how they behave. After the resurrection, everyone will move across a bridge that goes over the fire of hell and leads to the entrance to heaven. For those whose good deeds outweigh their bad, the bridge is flat and broad and the crossing easy. For sinners though, the bridge becomes as sharp as a razor and they fall into hell. Hell is a place of fire, everyone is tortured, miserable, thirsty, Baby Shark plays all day long. It's awful. Stuff like murder, theft, and cheating will get you sent there. Whereas heaven is a beautiful garden filled with rivers of milk and honey, where everyone is young, healthy, reunited with family, and subscribed to educational YouTube channels. Eventually, most people who go to hell will move up into heaven because God wants people to be in heaven. 4. The Quran. The Quran is the holy book of Islam. The word Quran simply means to recite or to say out loud. Muslims consider the Quran to be the direct word of God spoken through the mouth of Muhammad in Arabic. The Quran is about 600 pages long and is divided into 114 surahs or chapters. Each surah is divided into numbered verses or ayat, so you can find any quote from the Quran using the number of surah and ayat. Let's just pick a random number, 3119, which is, "Lo, the harshest of all voices is the voice of the ass." The Quran has no narrative structure. It's organized by length. The longest verses are at the beginning and the shortest verses are at the end. So the topic and narrative of the Quran jumps around a lot. One reason for this is because the Quran is supposed to be read aloud. Many Muslims even memorize the whole Quran. The Hadith are the second most important literature in Islam after the Quran. The Hadith are the sayings or actions of Muhammad, not God, that his companions heard and wrote down. Hadith fill in information that's not in the Quran on how to be a good Muslim. The Hadith were passed down orally before being written down. So not all hadith are created equal. They're ranked from strong down to weak, depending on how trustworthy the chain of transmitters from Muhammad is. For example, the hadith that reports that Muhammad said, "Forgive him who wrongs you," is considered strong because the chain of transmitters is trustworthy, whereas the hadith that talks about 72 virgins in heaven is very weak, and so most Muslims don't believe it. Sunni and Shia Muslims use different hadith, and some Muslims don't follow the hadith at all. 5. The 5 pillars of Islam. This core belief is split into 5, pillars. These act as the blueprint for how Muslims behave. First, you have the Shahada. The Shahada is simply a statement. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This is the shortest possible explanation of what Muslims believe. Saying it just once honestly makes a person a Muslim. Salat. Salat means prayer, and practicing Muslims pray 5 times a day. Before Salat, Muslims must perform wudu, or ritual washing of the face, arms, head, and feet. Each salat begins with the saying, "God is most great," or Allahu Akbar, followed by prayers in Arabic, along with movements like standing, bowing, and kneeling. Seriously, Muslim prayer looks like a proper workout. Because a Muslim stops whatever they're doing to pray 5 times a day, they're reminded of God and the values of the Quran. And when praying, Muslims face Mecca. The direction towards Mecca is called the Qibla. Muslim places of worship, mosques, are planned so that one wall, the Qibla wall, always faces Mecca. Even though mosques look different depending on where they are in the world, they all have a Qibla wall. Zakat. Zakat is a charitable tax on wealth that all Muslims should pay annually. The basic rate is about 2.5% of your current wealth. The Quran says, "Give money cheerfully to the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the traveling alien, the beggars, and to free the slaves." I'm assuming traveling alien probably means something different in that context than how I'm imagining it. Or does it? Today, every year, somewhere between $200 billion and $1 trillion is given to charity by Muslims across the globe through zakat. Muhammad preached that accumulating wealth was greedy. To stop the rich profiting off of poverty, the Quran outlaws interest-bearing loans known as usury or riba. Money can never be traded for money. Muslim wealth can only come from actual labor or fair trade. Swam. Swam is fasting. During the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn to sunset. Fasting includes no eating, no drinking, and no smoking. Pregnant women, the sick, and the disabled do not have to fast if it puts stress on their bodies. And women on their period can also delay their fast. Through fasting, a person experiences how the poor suffer on a daily basis. And fasting breaks up life's regular routine and invites introspection and meditation on God. Ramadan ends with the feast of Eid. During this holiday, Muslims give extra zakat to the poor, share food, visit their mosque, and eat with friends and family. Hajj. Hajj is the pilgrimage to the Kaaba at Mecca, the holiest place in Islam. Every Muslim must make the pilgrimage once in their life, if able to do so. For over 1,000 years, Muslims from all over the world have flocked to Mecca. On Hajj, there is no distinction between rich and poor or nationality and race. Today, more than 2 million people make Hajj every year. And those are the 5 pillars of Islam. Next, let's look at some topics you've probably heard a lot about when it comes to Islam. Women. Islam and women is a pretty topical issue. So how does Islam address women, and what exactly is the deal with the veil? Well, first of all, this is a hijab, this is a niqab, this is a chador, and this is a burqa. The hijab is by far the most popular veil you'll see. The burqa and niqab are only found in deeply conservative communities or Afghanistan, and the chador is mostly found in Iran. Not all Muslim women wear veils, and some Muslim majority nations have actually banned headscarves, while in other Muslim majority nations, women are pressured to wear them. It's a controversial issue within Islam itself. But why do some Muslim women wear these veils? One reason is culture. The veil is part of many people's cultural identity. Another reason is that Islam preaches modesty. Muslims should be modest in their words, actions, tempers, desires, appetite, everything really. Men and women are instructed to wear loose-fitting clothing that should cover most of the body. There isn't a difference made in the Quran between how men and women should dress, and it never states that women need to cover their faces. Veils in general seem to have entered early Muslim culture from their Roman neighbours. The only reference in the Quran to women covering their faces is about Muhammad's wives, and most Muslims consider those verses to only apply to Muhammad's wives. Throughout the Quran, God repeatedly attacks those that say women are inferior to men and repeatedly demands that women be treated equally. Muhammad even pushed for women's education, saying, if a daughter is born to a person and he brings her up, gives her a good education, trains her in the arts of life, I shall myself stand between him and hellfire. The Quran also guarantees a woman's right to work, divorce, and own property. Halal. Halal is simply the Arabic word for permissible. If something's halal, that means Muslims can do it without worrying it's a sin. Most foods are halal except for pork, donkey, predators like lions, wolves, cats, and dogs, birds with talons, eels, lizards, mice, rats, and monkeys. Blood. Blood is also banned. Don't drink blood. Alcohol is also not halal because alcohol has negative effects on health and society. Although, funnily enough, alcohol is an Arabic word. In order for meat to be halal, the animal must not suffer. Its neck must be cut quickly at the throat while saying God's name, to give it a quick and painless death. The animal should not be able to see or hear or smell the previous slaughter, and it must not see the blade beforehand, so that it doesn't become afraid. Animal cruelty is outlawed in the Quran. Muhammad said, a good deed done to an animal is as meritorious as a good deed done to a human being, while an act of cruelty to an animal is as bad as an act of cruelty to a human being. Sharia law. Shakira law. Whenever, wherever Muslims get together, talk of Shakira law will be near, and that's a big deal, my dear. Shakira noises. Didn't really think this bit true. Didn't think about singing it. Sharia law is talked about everywhere these days. The 3 times it's mentioned in the Quran, Sharia normally refers to the capital W way. The way a Muslim should live to most please God, to bring order to society, and to get into heaven. The literal meaning of Sharia is path to a waterhole, which to a desert people was literally a path to life. Thinking of Sharia as only law tends to cause confusion. Sharia mostly covers personal matters and contracts between people, how to pray or fast, how to treat neighbors, not lying, how to marry and divorce. This stuff is the main focus of Sharia, and how to pray isn't something that's enforced by law. The Quran in general doesn't have much law in it, but Muslim societies wanted to have laws influenced by Sharia. So looking at the message of the Quran, Muslim scholars decided the goals of legal Sharia were the protection of life, property, family, faith, and intellect. Over the centuries, scholars made claims about the Sharia and then backed up those claims using the Quran, the Hadith, and reasoning. The body of legal rulings that came from their interpretation of the Sharia was Islamic law, or fiqh in Arabic. But fiqh is the result of human opinions, and so can be wrong and is changeable. Fiqh can try to capture the Sharia, but probably never will, so fiqh evolved constantly. Sharia is aspirational. It was never written down in a big ancient book of unchanging rules. Different Muslims around the world and at different times have different interpretations of what Sharia is, and made fiqh based on those interpretations. You might see Saudi Arabia, Daesh, or Boko Haram cry Sharia as they abuse and torture people. But most Muslims do not consider what those groups do as Sharia in any way. Most Muslims would consider violence to be anti-Sharia. But headlines focus on those groups anyway. Sharia can and has been used to champion justice and equality. For example, Musawa is an organization which uses Sharia to promote gender equality. That's the fascinating thing about Sharia. It's an argument, process, a way to learn, grow, and adapt. Learning is usually hard, but today it's easier than ever because Cogito and a bunch of our creator friends have built their own educational platform called Nebula, and we're excited to be partnering with CuriosityStream. Nebula is a place where you can watch some of the best educational content ad-free and earlier than YouTube. This video was up on Nebula days ago. On Nebula, creators can experiment with all kinds of new and exclusive stuff without having to worry about YouTube's quirks like demonetization or the algorithm, blessings be upon it. This channel has exclusive content up over on Nebula, and so do dozens of other creators. By supporting Nebula, you'll be providing a budget for creators to put together high-quality Nebula originals that would never make it on YouTube. Take, for example, Tom Scott's game show, Money, where he just pits some of your favorite creators against each other for entertainment. Or would you like a high-quality World War II docu-series? Well, Real Engineering's Nebula original would suit you. Or maybe a series breaking down video game storytelling. Well, there's a Nebula original for that. Or maybe you want to see a behavioral psychologist using odd psychology to solve problems. Well, there's a Nebula original for that as well. There are so many more, and they're all funded by and created for people like you, people that enjoy original, smart content. And now Nebula has original podcasts too. But what does CuriosityStream have to do with this? Well, as the online champion of high quality documentaries, they love education and educational creators. So we've teamed up to create a deal. If you follow the link in the description, you can sign up for CuriosityStream and you'll get Nebula for free. And that's not a trial or anything like that. As long as you have CuriosityStream, you'll get Nebula. And right now, for a limited time, CuriosityStream is offering Cogito viewers 41% off their annual subscription as a holiday discount. That's less than $15 a year for both CuriosityStream and Nebula. So you can watch Nebula originals from Tom Scott, Real Engineering, and Lindsay Ellis, along with geniuses like David Attenborough and Stephen Hawking. As I researched this video, I watched Islamic art over on CuriosityStream, and it was gorgeous.